Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
Boys. The seasons feed the story. As autumn leaves are falling, the future seems appalling. Run for shelter.
Welcome back to the Big Plantation, everybody. We're getting right into our guest segment of the show. Tonight joining us is Zakk Whitman, a independent ancient history researcher, author of the book that so graciously sent me for free, a thesis of angels. He writes articles for ancientwisdomco.uk, and he's the co-director of the Ancient Wisdom Foundation. He's also a father of three and managed to find time to be with us tonight, and we appreciate it. Zakk, you there?
Yep, I'm here, buddy. How you doing?
Not too bad, man. I'm glad you could join us. So, before we really get into anything, I wanted to, because, you know, the book's called A Thesis of Angels, so I wanted to see what exactly do you subscribe to as far as your own religious beliefs, if you don't mind me asking?
No, that's fine. Well, I'll start off with saying that I do believe in God. I believe in Jesus, whether, actual person, God, or metaphorical. I'm not really too sure. I was raised in a strict Christian home, church every Sunday, Bible reading, basically everything a typical Christian family would do. I have always been someone who listens and observes, and, well, honestly, I started noticing and observing things that caused doubt in what I believed. I started to question, my dogma, my beliefs. I can give you one example of why. This isn't really the biggest reason, but it's pretty good. My church used to have a youth ministry. It was called the Upper Room Cafe. In the town I lived in, it was probably the best thing to happen to the community. It was true evangelism, just taking in the town's kids, even the bad ones, giving them a place to congregate in a safe, supervised environment, and in a small town that was plagued with heroin, crack, pills, broken families. It really was a godsend. Well, the elders of the church, they began complaining about the kids. They were loud, destructive, left messes, so they stopped the program. They were more concerned with having a cafe to make profit than witnessing to kids who desperately needed it. And this happens across the world, in varying degrees, and multiple religions, of course, but specifically, like I said earlier, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, so I feel it's my duty to bring this to light and to kind of ask the Christians out there who say one thing but do another, what are you doing? Are you really living your life for what you believe, or are you just going to church on Sunday? I will state also that my personal beliefs have nothing to do with the website that I contribute to or the articles I write. Strictly my view. I'm not trying to put that into my work. But does that answer your question sufficiently?
Amen. No, yeah, definitely, and that's that's what a lot of people, especially in our circle, subscribe to. It's the belief in the teachings of Jesus, but not necessarily the organized religion as a whole. And we definitely feel that vibe here at the Big Plantation. But so the reason I ask is just because there's a lot of information in the book, and it's clearly coming from a perspective of somebody who has had access to a lot of biblical texts and research throughout their life. So I see it coming from that kind of standpoint. But in your own words, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your book's about?
It's a pretty broad topic.
Yeah, well, no. I'm sorry. It just you had a short summary about what the book was about. And the direction that you were taking with it, the reason you got involved in doing it in the first place.
Sure. Well, the reason I did it in the first place is basically sort of a personal record. After a lot of stuff happened with the church in a negative way. I doubted, and I kind of just stopped believing anything. Well, anyways, I got back involved after a couple things that happened in my life with a paranormal investigation group. And I think the investigations really opened me back up to the metaphysical aspect of life. And I wanted to know the root of everything, especially where what I was taught, really where it came from. Coming from a Protestant background, like you said, I do have a deep understanding of spirituality, especially the Christian worldview. And it made it really easy to identify certain important factors that prove all religion really stems from the same place. To give you an example, we see back as far as the Paleolithic era, reverence for Pleiades, Orion, Taurus, record of celestial procession, anomalies, and specifically we have intricate trackings of lunar solar procession. Now remember, this is just what we know is the beginning. There's a lot more lost to time that we'd like to admit. And, every year there's more discoveries that give us another piece of the puzzle. Along the timeline of religious procession, we see the earliest emergence of what is known as a shaman. We see even, modern indigenous tribes today perpetuating the ancient designation of a holy man. They are considered oracles, healers, teachers, so on and so forth. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The roots of modern culture, modern law, modern civilization, modern religion can ultimately be traced to the Neolithic, Middle Neolithic, specifically about 7,000 to 6,000 years ago in the various Mesopotamian cultures. Take, for example, the creation of man. You're familiar with the Christian worldview of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and he made us from Adam's rib. That was Eve. He made Adam from the dust of the earth. Now, in the original Akkadian text, back to about 3000 BC, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, specifically the creation of Enkidu, it says this, straightway this concept of Anu, and washing her hands, Aruru fingered some clay, and on the desert she molded it. Now, Enkidu is the Akkadian version of Adam, the first man created. And if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, you'll see that he is just like the animal. He has no human characteristics whatsoever. Do what? I'm sorry, you were breaking up.
I'm sorry. Are we losing him?
I think he's back now.
Okay,
he should
cool.
be back now. We lost him for a second.
You got me?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Zach. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So anyways, Enkidu was wild like the animals. Go ahead. Do you need me to try to step out somewhere else? Hello?
Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Okay, so you were talking about the creation myth, the Enuma Elish. It sounds like from Sumeria. Just continue on. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
Yeah. Anyways, can you still hear me?
Yes,
You're good.
Okay. So anyways, you have, like I was talking about, Enkidu, the Akkadian version of Adam. If you read the Corpus Hermeticum under Pomandries, Hermes says, and as all things were produced by the word of one being. If you look at, for example, the Indus Valley texts, hymn CXXIX or 129, which is creation, it says, that one thing breathless, breathed by its own nature, apart from it was nothing whatsoever. He, the first origin of this creation, whether he formed it all or did not form it, whose eye controls the world in the highest heaven. And that's, of course, the Rig Veda. Now, if you look at Israel, the Holy Bible, or the Torah, Genesis 2:7, then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. So what we see is one being creating man from the dust, the clay, and the dirt of the earth. That is universal throughout all these ancient religions. We see this at its earliest origins in Sumeria, then it trickles down to the modern-day beliefs. And almost every account of creation has several similarities that they denote, and it all comes from one progenitor culture. Take, for example, even the 7 days of creation. In the Enuma Elish specifically, in Genesis, the gods, or God and the angels, worked for 6 days, but they rested on the seventh. And there's other things as well that transfer. Another thing that I came across in my most recent studies is a tale of Inanna in the underworld. Inanna spent exactly 3 days and 3 nights, same time as Jesus, in the underworld, for somewhat of a similar reason. Another thing as well, ancient man back to Neolithic, even Paleolithic, were remarkable astronomers. The Paleolithic period, just for some background, the earliest record of hominids, which is about 2.6 million years ago, is when it starts. Then it goes to approximately 10,200 BC. That's when the Neolithic period begins, and that ends in about 2000. Now, as far back as like 34,000 BC, we see star patterns of Orion that was found on baboon bones. We see a 30,000-year-old record of moon precession on a bone dated to 32,000 BC, all the way down to when Stonehenge was first created in 7,100 AD. And we go to places like Egypt, 4,500 was Nabta Playa, and they had a lot of cosmic observations that went on there. Of course, 4,000 BC was when the Sumerians famously recorded Pleiades, Orion, as well as a lot of other constellations and their specific movements. Now, what's really interesting as well is how astronomical and cosmological knowledge was lost. For example, the Egyptians had the heliocentric theory before 2000 BC. They invented the 365-day calendar, and it was based on astronomical observation. They developed instruments that measured quantitative astrological movements in the heavens. They included things like the sundial, water clocks, the Merkit. They discovered precession of the equinoxes. They had knowledge of at least 43 constellations. They wrote massive tables of star culminations, of risings. They predicted eclipses. They discovered that the Earth was spherical, and that was at about 275 BC. So we see in the pattern of human history what appears to be a peak of knowledge and a loss of knowledge, followed by a peak of knowledge. And when you look at the different various things that happen during these losses and peaks, it seems almost manipulated. Now, if anybody wants any information on the things that I just said, as far as like looking up the sources for what I said about the Egyptian discoveries, you can go to www.ancient-wisdom.co.uk/astronomy.htm. But possibly one of the most important things, at least to me, about my book is how it shows that Christianity and even other religions such as Islam are really modern incarnations of ancient religions. Take, for example, Mary of the Catholic Church. Now, before I start talking about it, I don't want to say anything, to disrespect or to vilify anybody, but it's just the truth, and frankly, it needs to be said. The reverence of Mary has really always bothered me. The Catholics know her as the Queen of Heaven, and they got that title from ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. Specifically, ancient Mesopotamia was Inanna or Ishtar, which was the Queen of Heaven. And over the centuries, other women held this title, of course, until it trickled down into Diana or Artemis of Ephesus. Now, ironically, Mary worship was solidified during the Council of Ephesus, which was the Third Ecumenical Council. And it was held in the city of Goddess Diana, which also was Artemis, in modern-day Turkey, Ephesus. And it directly resulted in the enactment of Mary worship and the foundation that she has right now in the church to be equal or even supersede Christ. Now, I'm sure you know the Temple of Artemis was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Unfortunately, it was destroyed. But like Mary, Diana was a virgin. She was the goddess of the moon in both Roman and Ephesian cults. But the Ephesians always considered her their goddess, and they always took offense when others claimed her as theirs. For example, in the Bible, she's mentioned pretty regularly. Acts 19:35, the city clerk quieted the crowd and said, "Fellow Ephesians, doesn't all the world know that the city of Ephesus is the garden of the temple of the great Artemis and her image, which fell from heaven?" So we see this reverence of the Queen of Heaven going back much, much farther than Mary was even conceived. By most accounts, the temple of this great goddess of Artemis was one of the largest and grandest in the ancient world. Now, the city of Ephesus itself was home to several church councils. The first council of Ephesus, I believe it was 431, the second council, which was 450, and the third council, which was 475. the importance of the first council is pretty much paramount. It was established to deal with a Nestorian controversy, which is the rejection of Theotokos, or the bringer of God, by Nestorius. He was the patriarch of Constantinople during 428-431. Now, the Nestorian view says there are two persons in Christ, his human side and his divine side. He suggested the term Christokokos, which is bringer forth of Christ. What this did was rejected Mary as the origin for his divine side, basically rejecting the idea that Mary gave birth to God, just gave birth to the body of Jesus. Now, many thought this bordered too close to adoptionism, which is Christ being accepted as God's son after birth, and eventually this led to the Nestorian schism. Of course, schisms are very rampant in the church. Now, a couple things that really solidify Diana's comparison to Mary is she remained a virgin after the birth of her child, and the current beliefs of Mary that are outlined in the Catechism of the Catholic Church are that she did remain a virgin after the birth of Christ. That can be found in paragraph 510. The liturgical feast dedicated to the God and Marian prayers, such as the Rosary, are the epitome of the whole gospel. Mary, when the course of her earthly life was completed, was taken up body and soul into the glory of heaven, which isn't biblical. I mean, the Bible never said Mary was, resurrected. And it also stated that she was preserved free from all original sin, which means she was sinless like God, which I can't accept that. I don't see how anyone could. Now, here's some examples of other Madonna and child worship before Mary and Christ. Semiramis and Tammuz, which comes from Babylon. Nana and child, which I mentioned earlier, which comes from Sumeria. The Virgin Hertha and child, which is an ancient pagan Germanic belief. You have also Disa and child, which is Scandinavian. Nutria and child, which belonged to the Etruscans. Virgo and child, which was more of a Druidish belief. Indrani and child, which was Indian. Isa and Iswa, which was Indian. Aphrodite and child, which is Greek. Xingmu and child, which was China. Venus and Jupiter, which was Roman. And, of course, the famous Isis and Horus, which was Egyptian. So you really can see here that if you kind of abandon your modalist concept of Christianity, you really see that the influences were there much farther than Christians really like to admit.
What you're alleviating to is what we were talking about before was the early Mesopotamian religious cultures that existed that most of this roots from, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, well,
Now,
and
go ahead.
This is exactly. I mean, your book is it's filled with an absolute wealth of information. I encourage anybody listening to the broadcast to go out and get it. We'll be sure to post the link later on the Big Plantation's Facebook page. But it really was. It was a really overwhelming read. I mean, there's like 400 pages of information. I don't even think I got the whole thing. You couldn't even send me the last 3 chapters of it. But it was really great and. As far as all of that, as far as that goes, but some of the other questions that I did have for you, because I mean, there's just so much that most of that was just chapter 8 of this book that you just went through in the last like 20 minutes. But there's the one thing that really stuck out to me about I believe it was the Middle Ages. It was Hans Wolf Glazier. He had a woodcut, and it was about this battle going on in the sky. There were also other documentations of this in different parts of Europe around the same period of time. And this is one of those items that a lot of people really don't talk about. I mean, you might see it like on Ancient Aliens or something like that, where they'll just briefly go over it. But you had a good portion of the book or a good portion of the chapter that actually talked about this. And I kind of wanted you to elaborate on it a little bit for anybody that's not familiar with it.
Sure, yeah. What those wood carvings are, there's actually 2 of them. They're referred to as the Wickiana collection. Now, the collection itself is one of the highest regarded collections of old news reports and documents that happened in the 1600s, in Europe, of course. Now, it covers a lot of different things. It covers the Reformation of Switzerland. It covers the Comet of 1577, a total of 439 different wood cuttings and articles of pretty important things back then. Now, there's two specific woodcuts that I put in the book, and they really do relate to the writings because I believe in intelligent design, and I believe that relates to how I believe in God. Now, the first woodcutting was described as a war in the heavens. It's probably one of the best recorded events of, I hate to say this, UFOs, unidentified flying objects. I'm not saying the gray aliens that are in Hollywood. I'm not saying anything Hollywood. I'm just saying things that don't come from Earth. And it was they were seen flying in the skies of Nuremberg, Germany. During the citywide sighting, hundreds of people saw it, thousands of people saw it, I'm sure. What was witnessed was vehicles, crosses, tubes, cylinders, circles, and they didn't simply just hover. They were flying, they were shooting, they were destroying each other, and it was really a remarkable aerial combat scenario that, like I said, thousands of people seen. And it was later actually termed the judgment of God, whether it was or not, of course. I won't speculate, but I have here, let me look here. I have one of the translations from the wood carvings, and it says, "At the time when the sun rose, one saw many large black balls which moved at a high speed in the air towards the sun, then made half turns. Banging one against the others as if they were fighting a battle-out combat, a great number of them became red and ignited, therefore they were consumed and died out." There's more, but I won't go into it. Now, the battle was also shown to have a clear victor. After a pretty long progression of combat, there was a large black object that appeared in the sky, and that seemingly ended the conflict. And one side remained, the other side fled away into the sun from which they purportedly came. And it's actually, it's pretty interesting considering if you know, or if you read the Bible and you know the vehicles that are in the Bible, they sound very similar to Vimanas. And of course that term has been absolutely blown out of the water as far as disinformation and just misinformation, I guess, but it seems to be what that was. Now, another instance similar to the Nuremberg incident happened in Basel, Switzerland. It was in 1566. It was the same type of arrow battle that was observed over Nuremberg, and it had similar outcomes. Now, when you hear about these things, some people say, yeah, right, it didn't happen. Honestly, we don't know whether it happened or not. All we know is that those two wood carvings are in the Wickiana collection, and the Wickiana collection records some of the greatest things that happened during that time.
Yeah. Well, we've got about a minute before our break, and I don't want to get too much into another question before we come back. But definitely during this break, if anybody wants to check it out, the site is ancient-wisdom.co.uk. And there's just a wealth of information on there. There's the book is A Thesis of Angels, and I just have so many questions lined up for you. But honestly, I've got to scratch most of these, and we'll just we'll get back to you guys after the break and continue this conversation. We'll try to take calls. The number to call in is 567-314-9296. And if you have any questions for Zakk, please feel free to call in.
If you lose reason, only reason you lose.
Do you have a group or organization founded on the principles of personal liberty, health freedom, or accountable government? We invite you to check out Same Side Entertainment. Same Side is a source for activists and liberty organizations to connect with well-known leaders in today's growing movement for sustainable living, personal liberty, and sovereignty issues. Same Side has a variety of keynote speakers, debate panels, interactive web presentations, musicians, and liberty-based entertainment, as well as services for web design, graphic design, video, and photography. Same Side can help customize your event by connecting you to the best of the liberty and political world while staying within your budget. Get connected with leaders in the liberty movement like Tom Woods, Kevin Gutzman, Jack Hunter, Robert Scott Bell, Bob Murphy, Michael Scheuer, John Bush, Jordan Page, Tatiana Moroz, and many more. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our website at www.samesideentertainment.com. Again, that's www.samesideentertainment.com. Same Side Entertainment, connecting you with the education and resources you need.
Obamacare. Fun. Cool. YOLO. At Obamacare, we believe in saying the words affordable health care so that young people will love us and sign up like lemmings. Sure, you pay 2.5% of your income in penalties, but young people don't have to worry about that because you don't have a job. Work sucks. That's why we at Obamacare want to trade your full-time job for a part-time one, so you'll have more time for fun things, like watching millionaire celebrities tweet about how affordable we are. Obamacare. Just like guys enjoy premium leather seats, so too you'll enjoy paying triple the healthcare premiums out of your new part-time salary. Speaking of guys, ever been on a mandate before? At Obamacare, we're full of mandates. But don't worry, big corporations get exempt, so you don't have to. It's fun paying for things you don't even use. Yeah, you work out, stay healthy. But come on, brah. Someone's got to pay for people who smoke, drink 85-ounce sodas, and live in a Barcalounger. So enjoy your premium hikes, young people of America, because everyone loves hikes. Obamacare. If millionaire celebrities can afford us, why can't you? A message from the White House Office of Obamacare. Propaganda to get young people to love us and sign up like lemmings.
In every age, a technology is created that upends the foundations of society. The wheel, the printing press, the internet. Now, in a world sliding into financial chaos, a new technology is changing the way monetary systems work around the world. It is called Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a new form of money, controlled not by banks, governments, or corporations, but through mutual commerce between free individuals. To learn more, visit weusecoins.com.
Well, yeah, it's getting tough out there. Yeah, no doubt. I work in home invasions, mostly. Some murder, occasional rape, if she's hot, or really bitchy. And I'm a huge advocate of gun control, absolutely. Every time I kick in a door or smash a window, I face the possibility of being shot and killed. Allowing citizens to own guns creates a hostile work environment for me and my associates. No one should have to work under those conditions. I say make them all illegal, absolutely. I mean, I break the law for a living. I'm a professional, so it doesn't really bother me. No doubt. No doubt.
Your local violent criminals work hard and put their lives on the line every time they attempt to murder, rape, abduct, or assault a member of the citizenry. They desperately need your help. With your support, there may finally come a day when a violent criminal can have his way with you or someone you love without the fear, anxiety, and stress caused by knowing there's a possibility his victim might be armed. Please show your support by voting for stronger anti-gun legislation because criminals prefer unarmed citizens.
In 1997, a high school shooting was stopped by a vice principal with a gun. In 1998, a middle school shooting was ended by a neighbor with a gun. In 2002, a terrorist attack was stopped by a school guard and a teacher with a gun. After September 11th, pilots began carrying guns to protect their passengers. Let's give our schools and teachers the same option. Sign the petition at defendschools.com.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
This country's foundation is based in pagan beliefs. Idol worship and occult symbols paved in the streets. I don't blame the weak sheep for staying asleep and embracing the matrix.
Welcome back, everybody, and getting right back into this great conversation we're having with our guests. We're probably going to skip a little bit more of the questions on the book that I had because just for sake of time. But if anybody wants to check it out, definitely I encourage everybody to read it. And we're going to have you back on. The co-hosts are blowing up about this; they love it. But some of them had a couple questions for you. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I'll start off. And if you could just do me a favor and say, I got a couple listeners asking me what your website was. I know you said it before, but if you could just say it again.
Zach?
Do we have Zakk there? All right. He's probably just coming back. The site is ancient-wisdom.co.uk. And the book is A Thesis of Angels. If you type it into Google, you can find it. And I believe it's $12.99 paperback. You can get it off of Amazon. It's probably even cheaper than that now. It came out last year. We're getting them on here a little bit late. But Zakk, are you back? Alrighty.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to ask, if we get him back, what I would like to ask him is, what exactly is his thesis on angels, because this is something I've actually been kind of getting into a little bit recently, and I've kind of put some things together that it's a really different way of thinking about it, because we're used to when you hear angels, a lot of people's mind goes straight to the Bible and have a paradigm about it, like a predetermined thought about what is angels, and when you take into account, one thing that Zakk mentioned was that there seems to be one source for everything, and that ancient cultures are kind of repeated in that one source, that everything is coming from one thing. And I think from what my research is telling me, that all of that stuff is biblically consistent, whereas a lot of times we like to look at it as being separate or disproving of the Bible, and or in opposition to it. I'm seeing more and more that these wild revelations of ancient cultures are more in line with the Bible. So I'm starting to think that when you're talking about it in a physical sense, that possibly angels and demons and things like that could be what would normally be called extraterrestrials.
And we're getting hung up on words, and then the real title for these things is kind of inconsequential. They're all pointing to the same truth. And what we were talking about before the break sounded like we were leading into talking about Ezekiel and the wheel within a wheel, which as producer pointed out is also referenced within Plato, and how these things all wind up pointing to each other. Do we have Zakk back?
Well,
I
also wanted to ask Zakk on a personal level, because it seems like the spiritual journey he had, with coming up with a church-type upbringing, and then, almost setting out to disprove it to himself, sounds very reminiscent of C.S. Lewis. And I was wondering if any of C.S. Lewis's lectures or teachings, if he's read anything on that, and what his viewpoint would be on C.S. Lewis and his philosophies.
Well, you know what? I mean, if we're...
I think we actually might have him back. Producer just said he's back online. You there, Zakk? All right. Well, if you guys just continue this conversation, I'm going to give him a call real quick and see what's going on.
Sure. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Moses,
what were you going to say?
Moses, this is something that me and you talk about a lot, and I got to credit you with being a mentor to me and a lot for things like this. You know how my mind works a lot, and so what is your, because I know you put me on to C.S. Lewis, and I'm finding it very interesting and very relevant. And I'm finding that a lot of people don't even, especially in Christian circles even, don't even know who he is. So why don't you give me why you think C.S. Lewis is an important talking point to bring up?
Well, that's a great point to say that in Christian circles he's not really brought up. I think it's ironic and funny that he's not talked about in general history at all, much beyond Narnia and the language and the wardrobe, where that would be about 1% of the relevancy I see in a C.S. Lewis. But what was important was the time of his coming up, and then his teaching then in Oxford, the spiritual journey that he went on, being raised in a traditional Christian church, much like our guest Zakk was, actually becoming a devout atheist, going into 100% the sciences, and then studying that and debating it using Socratic theory, which is Plato again, and wound up reasoning his way to Christianity. as a universal truth, and therefore taking that kind of upbringing and laying it against that kind of science and education, and then coming to that spiritual enlightenment and being able to say things as poetically as C.S. Lewis does in like the Screw Tape, and understand the where he's coming from in that book, or Mere Christianity, and why the church would not like teachings like a C.S. Lewis, because it's questioning their churchly, certainly as Zakk was pointing out in the Catholic Church, raising Mary to the level of deity. That raises a lot of questions. There's a lot of parallels between what he's saying and C.S. Lewis did. So,
well, we're going to try this again. I think we have Zakk back with us. Zakk, are you there? Okay. So, I do not know what the issue is. We are definitely going to have to reschedule another interview, though, and hash this out, because I think all of us at this point have gone pretty deep into different ancient cultures, and it ties into something that we've all been talking about recently in private outside of the show, having to do with the reality of I hate the word religion. I don't want to call it religion, but these kinds of topics and things like that, the reality of it, the philosophy of it, the history of it, and how it all ties together. So it's definitely interesting information. But so continue with C.S. Lewis. I agree, and what I'm finding is that, here in the Liberty Movement, there's plenty of people who are Christians who are part of the Liberty Movement, whether they're anarchists or whatever, or voters, doesn't matter. And we pride ourselves on following certain formulas for what makes our message relevant. We have logic on our side. Or if you're talking about quote unquote conspiracy theories, we have the facts on our side. We have things like that, and that is what is seeped in C.S. Lewis in his defense of Christianity. Like you said, he reasoned his way there, and it's. Anybody who appreciates a Stefan Molyneux or something like that would definitely be able to appreciate C.S. Lewis.
Well, also, when our guest points out the fact that he was working with, how that was dear to me, for him to say the fact that he was working alongside so-called church groups who were outreaches towards, I think he said, troubled youth, which would be identical to what I had dealt with. And then he saw that they were more concerned about how it looked on paper than having affect actual change in anyone, which is far, far removed from the teachings of Christ that they're supposedly subscribing to. So that was really an important viewpoint too. And you see how it pushes someone away from traditional church going and church viewership, and then instead, when you go and research, you'll find these universal truths, which are the important end of this. And that's what I think a C.S. Lewis points to. I would love to I want to read this book for one, definitely. I need to read it. But I would love to get Zakk's viewpoint on the importance that the astrology, or astronomy rather, even within the Bible has. When you talk about all these things that are referenced even by Jesus, which are in the sky, signs in the sky, and how the wise men were able to follow the stars to know that the fulfillment of prophecy was taking place. They come from the east, but they were clearly schooled in the Torah, which could only say that something like the story of Daniel, who was a wise man to Nebuchadnezzar and was able to, when he would call for people to interpret his dreams, Daniel is one of them, but the other ones are sorcerers. They were studiers of science at the time. They all had their different backgrounds in it. This would mean a blending of all that knowledge. So you can see the traces of Daniel's religion being in those wise men who were then able to come from the east and interpret signs that would be in the Old Testament to know that the Star of Bethlehem was there. These are all questions for Zakk. Is Zakk back?
I think I just heard him, actually, yeah.
Yes,
Zakk,
we've got him. Sorry about the hiccups, man.
Yeah.
Live.
Zakk, there was about 1,000 things we just addressed towards you. If you can answer them all, go ahead.
Okay.
Mike, why don't you go with your original question?
Lot, but
Hold on, let him go.
Okay. Is there any way you could start back at the beginning and just summarize what you were saying?
I think we'll just kind of start over. What I was saying is to kind of give a short version. What exactly would you say is your thesis on angels? Because one thing that I'm coming on in my my research is reflecting what you said, where there seems to be one common source, and it seems to me that the concept of extraterrestrials and all these kinds of things that are repeated in these ancient cultures that you cite are biblically consistent, and it's possible that not only are they there or were there, but actually so-called angels and demons. That's my opinion. What is
And just to add to that, Zakk, before you answer, based in Ezekiel, just Ezekiel with a wheel within a wheel, just to summarize what Mike was just saying. Go ahead.
Well, okay. What you have to realize when you are religious is you believe in extraterrestrials. And let's look at the definition of extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial means outside Earth, existing or coming from somewhere outside Earth and its atmosphere. That's what extraterrestrial means. Now, if you read the Bible, God is not terrestrial. God does not originate from Earth. He arrives at Earth. He creates everything out of the void with only the tumultuous waters between his feet. Now, let's look at the cross-culturality, because that's what's important. Astronomy is one thing, but that's pretty diverse. When you look at, like I was saying, take the Sumerian legend of Enkidu and Shamhat. That is Adam and Eve. At the Epic of Gilgamesh, what happens is Enkidu is created. He is one with the animals. He doesn't know right from wrong. He's not human. So he started pestering the villagers. He started pestering the townspeople. So they had this ingenious idea, I know how to fix this. Let's take the temple prostitute, Shamhat, and let's make him human. So Shamhat goes into the wilderness. Shamhat seduces Enkidu, and to put it politely, he does his thing for several days, and after he's done, he awakens anew. He's a human. The animals will not drink at the same well as him. The animals will not associate with him. And if you know the biblical story of Adam and Eve, that's right on par, even down to the serpent in that Gilgamesh kills later on in the epic. Everything is so interesting. And to be honest, all it is perspective. It's different. It's perspective is everything when you're looking at ancient religions. And as I said earlier, it does all originate from one source. So my thesis of angels, basically, what it shows is it argues for intelligent design by extraterrestrials. I mean, who else could do it? Like I said earlier, God has to be an extraterrestrial because God came from outer space or heaven or wherever. So, I mean, there's your answer right there. Now, we can see this in two different methods. We can see this in procession of religion, and we can see this in procession of culture, both link up together, which is the physical and the metaphysical side. You have your spirituality, and then you have your things like language, art, things like that. Now, here, the popular culture term is the Anunnaki, or the seven great gods. And that's typically ancient aliens. I'm not an ancient alien person because just Google ancient aliens debunked, and you won't be an ancient aliens person either. But when you look at the Anunnaki, which the real name of them is the Anunna, the seven great gods of the heavens. If you look at them, you see a couple different cross-cultural symbols. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. Okay. Anyways, so where they came from was the Vincan Empire, which existed between 6500 to 3500. And we see this predominantly in art. Their art trade routes stretched from Brittany all the way to the Indus Valley. And this is remarkable, considering the fact that not too long ago, ancient cultures were not supposed to have had any contact with each other. So what we're seeing is a scientific upheaval of what we thought was true. The absolute biggest thing to create this change in science is Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is kind of the catalyst for showing why evolution and science is really just a theory. Up until Göbekli Tepe's discovery, which is in Turkey, and actually me and Alex Whitaker of the Ancient Wisdom Foundation are going there this summer, as well as Bosnia, to investigate the alleged pyramids. I'll get into that later.
Hey, Zakk, I'd like to just jump in real quick because I love everything you're saying. It's great. and there's a lot of knowledge here, and you're pointing at something really important that we were talking about when you were going, which is I find your spiritual journey, if you will, very reminiscent to a C.S. Lewis. You use different terminologies, you go further back, but the philosophy section of what you're doing is very reminiscent to C.S. Lewis. I was curious if you were familiar with C.S. at all.
Well, to give you the entire background with him, I really don't know too much about him. I know he and Tolkien were friends or something like that. I did read all of his books when I was in middle school, but I really don't know too much about his spiritual journey other than that he was a Christian. That's all I know.
Well, initially, C.S. Lewis was raised in a church. I believe it was Catholic, may have been Baptist. He wound up turning away from the church, going into the University of Oxford, became a devout atheist, founded the Socratic Society at Oxford, and then with other contemporaries wound up reasoning his way to Christianity, and is not really beloved very much by the traditional churches or even kept in memory for books like Mere Christianity, Screw Tapes, or any of his lectures for that matter. And it's very reminiscent, the journey he took spiritually to what I feel like maybe you took in this through your digging. You discovered a universal truth that was playing out over and over again. And to correlate it to what's happening now when we were referencing ancient aliens, it seems to me to be pointing everybody then towards aliens as their god, or this idea in trying to keep them away from the actual truth while further propagating this evolution and science doctrine, Darwinism. Mind you that Darwin was almost a contemporary to Lewis. Lewis was knocking down Darwinism, but for some reason Darwinism is what overtook in the universities and became the universal science preachings that are happening. And what you have now is all this ancient alien history is instead being correlated to just that, aliens. And somehow this is giving less credential, in my opinion, to how fundamentally important it is that all these cultures share the same stories. Doesn't that prove or point to universal truth then?
It's disinformation, and it's targeted disinformation. If you look at the world around us, the whole world is disinformation. People want us to believe the wrong things so that we're in control. And I talk about it in my book, there is literally dozens of things that divide us. It can be big things like race, creed, color of your skin, who cares? But it could also be something as stupid as a sports team. If you look at ancient Rome, the people nowadays should not like sports as much as they do. Why? Because it is used as control. It was used as control back then, and the people who are sports fans nowadays are getting screwed over. They had free wine back then in Rome in the Colosseum. Now it's all commercial. It's all consumer related. And as anything that they can do to suppress the truth, I tell you what, as soon as Ancient Aliens came on the TV, I was glued. I was like, this is phenomenal. And then I started catching things. Specifically, their research is so ridiculously shoddy. I have an archaeology friend in India. His name is Anish Kumar. He's one of the Ancient Wisdoms Foundation's correspondents. And he actually verified with me that the nuclear ancient Indus Valley blast that they quote, Gurkha, I can look it up, Gurkha and projectile, whatever, it's false. It's not even in any Vedic text. They're simply making stuff up. Like I said, Google Ancient Aliens Debunked. If you Google that and you watch those videos, anybody who's listening, you'll turn off the History Channel and probably never watch it again because you're going to realize what it is. It's disinformation.
Absolutely. And I've seen those debunked videos. I urge everybody to watch them as well. I've urged Mike Heist to watch them. He didn't want to hear me. They use real history in there, but then you're just looking for that 10% poison that is in the rat poison. And there's a reason they're doing it, and it's some disinformation program that is really being kicked up right now.
Yeah, and that's actually it's really covered really well throughout history of how this has happened, especially in Chapter 9 of his book, The Atrocities of the Church. And this was probably one of my favorite well-documented items on exactly going throughout history how the church is just snuffed out culture in every sense of the word. But we've got about 5 minutes left here, and I want you to you got the floor because I know you wanted to talk about your foundation, a little bit. You wanted to talk about some research you were getting into and a discussion of the next book that's coming up. I know that's a lot to cover in 5 minutes, but as best you can.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess the research I'm doing right now is I found so much information reading Akkadian, Uruk, Sumerian, cuneiform, that I'm just focusing on that solely because that's the earliest religion that we really know a lot about. Before that, it's kind of sketchy. So here's a couple things that I found from my research I'm doing right now. Probably the most interesting aspect is the cuneiform itself. They have designations that are eerily similar to Christianity, specifically shepherd and lord. I have come across over 200 references so far of gods or heroes, demigods being called the shepherd of Urim, the lord of Euphrates, all kinds of different stuff, and it's primarily shepherd and lord, just like the Bible. Now, also front and center is the flood. The flood is recorded heavily through Lamentations, through deluge epics. It's everywhere. The number 7. The number 7 is crucial to Judeo-Christian beliefs, prophecy, and it is absolutely essential to Sumeria. Even such things as destiny, the whole destiny free will thing, demons are recorded. Guardian angels. Now, this is an excerpt from an Assyrian magician's manual. It says this: upon the one who's capable, vigorous and penetrating to the great knowledge, the two gods E and Ashurla will confer vast understanding. These gods will assure them a guardian angel whose name will be pronounced into the most distant of times. Now, that's kind of a little hair-raising to me because it says their name will be pronounced into the most distant of times. And if you look at one of the biggest disinformation bits that's going around now is the light workers, the Pleiadian hoax, all these aliens that are in spaceships above our atmosphere that can only communicate through us through YouTube videos. That kind of stuff is ridiculous, and those guardian angels are being perpetuated in that manner now. People are falling away from the church, so there's got to be a new way to get that disinformation out there. Real quickly, I'll go through the foundation. I really do appreciate you having us on. Of course, my research, my book and stuff is separate, but I'm also the co-director of the foundation. The primary goal of our foundation is really to encourage and foster research, investment, in the practical application of ancient wisdom in a modern context. One thing that we're doing right now, and Alex has been really great about, is he has this huge, enormous website, www.ancient-wisdom.co.uk. It's phenomenal. Everything that I'm talking about now, as far as culture and religion of those sorts, you can find on there, and you can find references if you're interested in looking at the reference. So that's one of the aims, is to keep that website there, to keep it free, to keep it growing. So we do need support, whether you're an article writer or you want to send us a cool picture, whatever. Go ahead and do it. We love it. We're also going on a fact-finding trip to the Bosnia pyramid, or supposed pyramid, and we're going to Göbekli Tepe. They are by far the most important archaeological sites right now, and we're going to go get some first-hand accounts, especially the Bosnian pyramid. And eventually what we're going to be doing once we get some marketers, maybe even some sponsors, we're going to open up a physical ancient wisdom center, one in the United States, one in the United Kingdom, and it's going to be a place where people can come and learn. We're also going to be replicating ancient technologies. We got a lot of cool stuff. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it. We're still
replicating ancient technologies. This is the coolest thing I've ever heard. The whole thing is amazing.
Yeah, man. Honestly, Zakk, we're going to have you on another time to talk about this. This has really been a great conversation. But, I know you're coming up with a new book and everything. Big Plantation would be more than happy to assist you on any kind of advertisement going on with that. But
hey, man, I appreciate being on, and definitely come back whenever you need me. But
absolutely, we're at the end of the show now, Zakk. I want to thank you for having you on because it was very enlightening. I want to talk to you about how the pyramids were built. I want to talk about Atlantis. I want to talk about so much more. Right, you got to come back on. We got to talk about the Baghdad battery.
Let's make it a day. Let's do it, buddy. All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right,
Thank
brother.
you, man. Right. Well, Big Plantation, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We're going to have the interview up by Tuesday, and I hope everybody cycles around. Tell your friends. Get on our page, facebook.com/bigplantation. Love you guys. See you next week.
Love you for freedom.
You're not alone.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.